Will it be good or will it be crap? Probably that's the question you're asking yourself before buying a Begode wheel, or any wheel for that matter. And as I was extremely satisfied with the Begode Extreme that I reviewed back in the day, the only extreme thing now when it comes to the quality of their products is my disappointment. So let me tell you more about it. Wrong way. So in the past months, I've received 4 wheels from Begode, which is the Begode mten5, the Begode Falcon, the Blitz, and the X-Way. 4 wheels have been either partially broken or totally broken, unrideable, or threw me off, like this mten5.
Oh, jackpot!
Now, of course, mistakes can happen, and you have prototype wheels, batches of wheels, but at some point you have to deliver a product that works. And while the communication with Begode has been, I would say, pretty good, and they listen to riders, and they respond to my messages, they hear me out, like, I still don't have the parts. I asked for parts for this wheel in October. It's January. I really don't want to make this video, and I had a lot of, happy thoughts after reviewing the Extreme, but as said, like, I have to be honest with you guys, and Begode, like, with your product, like, at some point you have to deliver.
How do I know you can deliver? You don't.
But before you'll get too emotional and you will have too many, thoughts of pride about your brand, like probably your brand has issues too. I had issues with Veteran before, although the Lynx has been performing really swimmingly in the months that I have been abusing it. The V14 that, yes, still awaits a review, also needed a fix, but it was pretty swift and they sent me the parts pretty quickly. And also don't sing a king song of praise, because the only reason why I don't complain about the suspension king song wheel in this video is because I didn't ride one for months.
You want the real deal? That's what this is. Wake up, you're in the middle of it. You want to run? Go ahead. No one's stopping you. Stop complaining.
I'm sure some of you are very happy with your wheels, and the companies are constantly evolving and improving. But in this video I wanted to tell you about the 4 wheels that I got from Begode, because I was intended to make reviews about them, but they're literally unreviewable. Like, this thing just doesn't work for the past months. And the X-Way, oh, the X-Way. So let me guide you through all of the issues and problems I had with those 4 wheels, starting with the Begode mten5. Now, when it comes to the Begode mten5, I think it has a special Marty Bach software installed to it, and they sent it to me in this way because, I don't know, maybe they want to kill me.
I don't know, call me crazy, but I don't think they deserve to have their bright futures ruined by a momentary, minute, never to be repeated lapse of judgment.
Hey guys, well, I'm here with a broken ankle.
The thing is that I rode this wheel just for 50 kilometers. I was enjoying it a lot, even though the trolley handle it's a bit like moving around, and it has its sort of pros and cons. I did like to ride this wheel, and this is a general theme of Begode wheels. They're nice to ride, but after 60 kilometers, it just turned off. I was riding on it. It was about 20 kilometers an hour, and boop! Suddenly I was aesthetically assessing my ass for injuries because it just turned off. Just had a crash on the mten4. It just very randomly turned off. Just decided to die. I told about it to Begode, and they were like, yeah, we'll send you a new motherboard, sorry about the issue. Now, this is an issue. Like, you don't want to ride a wheel and then suddenly it just turns off. Like, it could have been much, much worse.
A momentary, minute, never to be repeated lapse of judgment.
And this is not the end of the issues, mind you, because the mten5 Special Assassin version also got a new motherboard sent by Begode. Turns out it was broken out of the box. And so from the, well, I have the dates here. From the 10th of October, I didn't ride this wheel, and all it's doing is just sitting and collecting dust. So that is why there is no review of the mten5. It just doesn't work. And at this point, I'm like, is it even worth reviewing it? Because it might have, you know, all like nice features, it might be nice to ride, but if it just like turns off, is there a point to it? Now, I should have said about this earlier in the description of the problem, but the reason for this cutout was probably the loose axle.
I think it's a loose axle or something.
Now, an axle, which is holding sort of the pedal hangers here in place, or this element, I don't really know how it looks from the inside, it got loose. The axle like started shaking, and I didn't notice it because do you expect it after 60 kilometers? And because of the shaking, maybe there was a short in the motherboard. So yeah, loose axle, cut off, and a broken spare motherboard sent my way. On to the next one. Now this is the Begode Falcon. And out of those 4 wheels, I had the least amount of trouble with this wheel. Now there also were some annoyances like the pads. Here in the back there was a brake pad and it was digging into my calf so much that was literally unrideable. Like, it's not your fault if you hate the pads, they're just extremely unergonomically created. Yes, so I had to like cut them off, then I was able to ride. Like, it was unrideable in the stock pads. Then there is of course a hole in the mudguard, which I needed to tape up because of course there's a hole in the mudguard. The thing that protects you from the mud definitely needs to be more holy. Additionally to that, the wheel also has problems with its bladder. Let me explain. Okay, maybe I'll do it on the floor. Oh, am I your awesome with my feet? Maybe I am. Like, what is this? Like, it needs medicine. This almost sounds naughty. Another minor inconvenience was the kickstand, which bended one way upon a fall. Now, easy to fix, I just bended it back. No bigger issue, but the most annoying thing about it is that here is a hook and it just stopped working after I was riding it for a while. And then it got even worse after I had a crash on this wheel, which might happen on a wheel, and then the trolley handle got bent. So then the biggest feature for me of the Falcon, which is that it is easy to pick up with both hands, just doesn't exist anymore because I just can't pick it up with the mechanism. Also, you know, there's some like scratches from the trolley handle on the plastic casing. Like, I could look around for the very small annoyances for a while and tell you about them, but for the most part this wheel does work. It is somewhat enjoyable. Maybe if I would set up the springs differently, or the suspension and rebound knob, which by the way, you need to take off this whole plastic piece and this metal part to adjust your suspension. Maybe then it would stop making farting or humping noises. But as it is, out of those 4, this is the best result. Okay, so let's move on to the Begode Blitz. And here I'm quite sad because this was supposed to be my wheel for all of the extreme stuff, replacing the extreme. And I was thinking that the extreme would give a new direction to Begode with more quality, robustness, ease of use, etc. But it turns out the extreme was peak Begode, and it just went back to the MSX days from here, because as you can see here in the back, I had a crash on it, so this rear sort of nylon reinforced plastic broke. It wasn't a too major crash. Like, I had tougher crashes on the links and that survived it well. Here the threads are broken, nothing is holding on. This panel needs to be replaced, this needs to be replaced. The left part of this sort of fairing element needs to be replaced. So it's not made like a tank, unless what you mean is a toy Thomas the Tank Engine toy thing. Other issues on this wheel included the plastic elements here just popping out, the metal bracket here which doesn't fit so well to the battery. While I was checking here to make another clip, I think it's actually bending. Like, look at that. See the edge on the right side? What is this even? Like, how does this work?
Like, what?
Those screws could shear off if they're not tight, and in general the pedal bracket is not something that I'm a fan of, because it just doesn't seem all that durable, especially compared to prior Begode wheels. I'm sure people in the comment section can tell you more about issues with this. I did blast it in some bike parks and it did survive, but I don't know for how long. The carbon mudguard is no more. I did several jumps on this wheel in Prague and it just fell off. I didn't even crash it. It just fell off on its own. It just didn't want to be part of the wheel anymore. Oh yeah, and it wasn't really carbon, it was like plastic. Luckily the screen, the thing that most people were concerned about, it's still intact. Like, it's pretty well protected, no issues here. And the front bumpers did absorb quite a bit of hits. But there were also more issues regarding the suspension. First of all, I have the air suspension, and the air suspension is leaking air. I was putting more oil into the system, but it seems that it just vomits it out after a while. And for now, it's holding air a little bit, like the main chamber, but the dampening part doesn't work. So I think that there's a reason why successful EUCs with suspension have their suspension not made by the EUC manufacturers themselves, like Fast Ace at Veteran or DNM coils at King Song, or the Fast Ace suspension that I have on my V14, although I did need to service that too. So yeah. Spring suspension will sort of always work, but if you have air leaking out, especially in the winter, then you'll have a hard time. And this is also why I had so many clunks on this wheel. This wheel is very clunky. On every jump I have a clunk, and as much as I love to ride this wheel and as much as it is exciting to ride, this is something that really annoys me. Now, one of the suspension rods also got bent, but I'm not sure if it's the fault of the geometry or my fault. I needed to change the hole here for the geometry, and I did it with a inflated suspension, and maybe that got it bent because I left it like with just one hole and one side of the shock put in for like 2 days. So maybe it was my fault, but there was also a bent suspension rod. And in general, sadly, the wheel just creaks and squeaks and clunks. At this point, I'm like, I just want to ride. Do I have to just constantly work on this thing? And it's not easy to work on either, because it has so many more layers than the Extreme. Like, you just want to get access to the motherboard, you have to remove all of this. And sadly, this is not the end yet. No.
But wait! There's more!
There were also software issues or issues with something with it related to the system of the wheel. I did one drop on this wheel. This was the last day in Spain, and it just wouldn't allow me to ride over 10 kilometers an hour after that drop. It would tilt the pedals up, the front light would turn off. I think it was some sort of recovery mode, but I didn't know why, and also why did it happen like at all. So yeah, I couldn't ride it afterwards. I tried to flash a new firmware, but it got stuck in an update cycle, and I tried to get out of it. I tried the 2-button method to install new firmware, even though the wheel wasn't reacting at all, but it didn't work. So it was dead for a while. Later on, I got it to service, and they disconnected the battery, tried the software thing a bunch of times, and it works, and the wheel does work now. But yeah, it just takes a lot of enjoyment out of wheels if you just have to constantly deal with the issues. So I am currently waiting for parts for the Blitz, and I need a new shock. I will get a spring shock for it, or the best just get a custom linkage maybe from Honing Ning and install your own shock. That is a brand name damper. And the next thing I'm waiting for are sort of the bumpers and the top cover, and I'm waiting for this since the 1st October. Now I think the 1st October was for the shock, and since November or even December, yeah, probably like 10th December, I'm waiting for all of these parts, the bumpers and the top cover. So the last wheel I wanted to talk about today is the X-Way, and the X-Way is very aptly named because really it is like the X that you want to forget, and the X was way too much problems. This is a toxic relationship right there.
Oh shit, here we go again.
And as you noticed, I didn't do any video on this wheel yet because every time I wanted to, something else kept failing on it. And of course, manufacturers will tell you, no, this is, you know, this badge, this was a prototype. They sent me a prototype, which supposedly this is. But like at some point, like you gotta come up with something final, right? You can't just keep on telling us that, yeah, it's all right. Like the next version will be better. And the next version is worse, or the next version has something else broken. And at the same point, if you know that it's not ready, like why do you send this to me? Like this could have been very dangerous for me at times. And this is also why I am sort of making this video. Sort of the things just came together and I was like, no, that's too much.
No!
And I'll tell you a bit more about the support at the end of the video. First of all, the finish is horrible, and you can tell that these holes, like why are they silver? And this is exposed metal. It was just drilled into with a drill that has a bigger sort of drill bit at the end. The screws here, they poke out because they don't have the necessary set in elements, and in general, like this was just not really nicely made. Now they were telling me later that this is because it's a prototype. You know, if someone sends me something to review, this is what I will tell. There were also some minor issues, like I needed to put some Velcro in here because the seat was flopping around in the jumps, just clapping my booty when I don't want to. And in general, it also makes a lot of noise. Like this is probably the noisiest, creakiest wheel I've ever owned, and it doesn't even have so much mileage on it. Some issues were a bit more annoying though. Like for example, here on the front you have auxiliary connectors, which is awesome because you can connect some more stuff to your wheel. At least that's the function of it that I think is true. Anyway, those auxiliary connectors were just popping out on their own when I was doing jumps. So suddenly, like, you might not have a light, or you might not have the taillight. How do you test this stuff? And next to it, even worse, was the charge port. Now, the charge port is here located on the side, which is a new thing for Begode, and then they didn't find, at least on this unit, I don't know how it is now, a proper way to connect it to the motherboard, because the XT30 plug that is on the bottom of this element just barely fits. It's super fiddly to put it in. It's really difficult, it's really tight, it doesn't really want it. But don't worry, I did ask my ex for consent. And once it's in, it just pops out on its own, and it's not my fault. I did like 4 or 5 jumps and the XT30 plug just pops out. And once again, if it would be raining, like this is a big issue. Like you don't want water to come in there, right? And at the same time, the connector wasn't even properly sealed. Like this wheel looks like it was really rushed together just to send it to me. And then I'm like, why? Like, do you actually want me to review this? Because you will not do yourself a favor. Next to the charge port, we also have the light, and the light has a radiator, and the radiator was super sharp. So initially when I was riding on the wheel, the radiator would sort of damage the motor cable isolation. So I needed to sand down the radiator so it doesn't have any edges, so the wheel doesn't hurt itself. And we just found out that this element is not only holding the pedal in place, no, you can see here, this is the end of the suspension travel. You can see how fatigued it already is. 130 kilometers on the wheel. And yeah, But this is not the end of the issues. No, no, no. Next, the bearings failed. And usually with bearings, I'm like, okay, it can happen. You need to change them. Like sometimes I was changing them on EUCs after 1,500 kilometers, for example, on the Patton, or on the Lynx, I wasn't changing them for 4,000 kilometers. Everything was sealed properly and fine. It depends, but I'm kind of used to it. But after like 500 kilometers, I think it was a bit too soon. So I needed to change either the motor or the bearings. And usually the company sends you a new motor under warranty. It's been, I told about this since the 20th of November and I still didn't get one. So I changed the bearings at a repair shop and I needed to pay for it, and the wheel got fixed and the sound coming out from the broken bearings was no more. But it turns out that while repairing the motor, something else broke on the wheel. And it turns out that here, the screws which hold on like an adapter to a pipe, the slider mechanism which is inside, are made of dried chewing gum because the service shop needed to disassemble the wheel in order to get access to the motor, and probably by tightening those screws here, they tightened them a bit too much, and therefore when I got back with the wheel and put it on the kickstand here in my apartment, this fell out. The bolt. I was like, come on. And I needed to take the wheel in a couple of days. In the end, I didn't take the wheel for the trip. That's why I took the Blitz to Spain. With that said, this should not happen. Like, dried chewing gum bolts is not the right material to choose. I was working on my BMX recently, and there I broke my tool and not the screw. So this is the way how it should work. And here you either break a bolt or you break a thread. And on the topic of breaking threads, these screws. So the next issue I had with this wheel, which was actually prior to this whole shenanigan, is that they used two short bolts to connect the pedals to the adapter, which is here sort of underneath the battery case. And this is a pretty important element, don't you think? It has just 4 screws here. Does it have 6? No, it has just 4 screws. So like twice less than the Blitz, and this was supposed to be the off-road enthusiast wheel, which is more durable, and it was really just holding on by like 3 threads. I was actually pretty lucky to find out about that because I wanted to change the height of the pedals. You can imagine that if you apply a lot of force on a bolt which has just like 3 sort of rivets to hold on to, and you want it to hold tight because, well, you're standing on the pedals and on the bracket. The material of the thread, which is the battery case made out of, I don't know, Begodium, just damaged, and I needed to install a new thread. And by doing that, I realized how little surface area from the bolts is used on this adapter. So I needed to get new screws to install here, and for now it's been fine. And oh yeah, once during riding, I felt like the pedal is moving. And it was the bracket, it wasn't the pedal. Super scary. Like I could have hurt myself from that. And you know, you can say, well, we fixed that later. Like, can you just like try to not hurt me? Like, can you like give me a product that is already like made for what I'm doing? Like, I am doing jumps, I'm doing stairs, I'm doing, you know what I'm doing on the videos. Like, why do you provide me with this?
How do I know you can deliver? You don't.
Oh yeah, the cables, all of them here, I covered in silicone, so nothing moves anymore. I don't think the shock works all that well. I think it's leaking oil because it's working like not that smoothly, and it creaks a lot. Yeah, it's the creakiest wheel I've ever had, but did anything else break? I didn't even ride it all that much. Let me see in the notes. So I'm waiting for the spare parts on this wheel too. I guess with the screws no more, but I told them about that 1st November, and the bearings and the motor should have been sent, or at least in a ballpark, 20th of November. That's where I told them about that. And on the 23rd of November, I told them about the screws here. And with that said, there's also the ET Max. Now, my friend had a random cutoff on it, so that sucks. And a bunch of parts needs to be changed there too. Now, with that said, you can say that, okay, Begode had their race and they have lots of stuff to do And when I was talking with Anita, which is my sort of representative there, she's super friendly, super nice. She talks with me about the issues, she arranges the parts, but somehow I think internally in the company there's some dissonance, and that's why the parts didn't get sent in the meantime. But in the end, like, this is what I have, like, those are the products, this is the state of things, and I need to tell you about that. They are a company that is a really rider focused, and they listen to the needs. The wheels ride really well, although they're like, this is pretty creaky, and the suspension can be sticky, but I love to, you know, jump on the Blitz. I had a lot of enjoyment of pushing my limits on those wheels, but at some point you're just like, am I putting too much effort into it and I'm not really receiving the same amount of happiness back or the results? And I think this is the point for me, and probably it should have been a lot earlier. I think I was patient enough with all of the parts. And as said, I know I make some jokes in this video, I like puns, I like to maybe be a bit raunchy, but in the end, like, this is the product, this is what you left me with. Like, if it would be better, I wouldn't need to make this video. So yeah, this is it. I hope you liked this video. I hope I'll get the parts, although this might be questionable at this point. And if you're still here, keep positive, subscribe to the channel. We are almost at 69,000, very important goal. I can die a happy man after I reach that amount. And leave a like, comment what you think about it. See you soon.